Hello and welcome to The Essential Reads. My name is Isaac and my goal is to bring to you a bunch of classic audiobooks in an easy and accessible way. We are continuing with North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell, and this is chapter 19. Angel Visits. As angels come in brighter dreams, call to the soul when man doth sleep, so some strange thoughts transcend our wonted themes, and into glory peep. Henry Vernon. Mrs. Hale was curiously amused and interested by the idea of the Thornton dinner party. She kept wondering about the details, with something of the simplicity of a little child who wants to have all its anticipated pleasure described beforehand. But the monotonous life led by invalids often makes them like children, inasmuch as they have neither of them any sense of proportion in events, and seem each to believe that the walls and curtains which shut in their worlds, and shut out everything else, must of necessity be larger than anything hidden beyond. Besides, Mrs. Hale had had her vanities as a girl, had perhaps unduly felt their mortification when she became a poor clergyman's wife. They had been smothered and kept down, but they were not extinct, and she liked to think of seeing Margaret dressed for a party, and discussed what she should wear, with an unsettled anxiety that amused Margaret, who had been more accustomed to society in her 1 year in Harley Street than her mother in 25 years of Helston. "Then you think you shall wear your white silk? Are you sure it will fit? It's nearly a year since Edith was married." "Oh, yes, Mamma. Mrs. Murray made it, and it's sure to be right. It may be a straw's breadth shorter or longer waisted, according to my having grown fat or thin, but I don't think I've altered in the least." "Hadn't you better let Dixon see it? It may have gone yellow with lying by." "If you like, Mamma. But if the worst comes to worst, I've a very nice pink gauze which Aunt Shaw gave me, only 2 or 3 months before Edith was married. That can't have gone yellow." "No, but it may have faded." "Well, then I've a green silk. I feel more as if it was the embarrassment of riches." "I wish I knew what you ought to wear," said Mrs. Hale nervously. Margaret's manner changed instantly. "I shall go and put them on one after another, Mamma. Then you could see which you liked best." "But, yes, perhaps that will be best." So off Margaret went. She was very much inclined to play some pranks when she was dressed up at such an unusual hour, to make her rich white silk balloon out into a cheese, to retreat backwards from her mother as if she were the queen. But when she found that these freaks of hers were regarded as interruptions to the serious business, and as such annoyed her mother, she became grave and sedate. What had possessed the world, her world, to fidget so about her dress, she could not understand. But that very afternoon, on naming her engagement to Bessy Higgins, apropos of the servant that Mrs. Thornton had promised to inquire about, Bessy quite roused up at the intelligence. "Dear, and are you going to dine at Thornton's, at Marlborough Mills?" "Yes, Bessy. Why are you so surprised?" "Oh, I don't know, but they visit with the first folk in Milton." "And you don't think we're quite the first folk in Milton, eh, Bessy?" Bessy's cheeks flushed a little at her thought of being thus easily read. "Well," said she, "you see, they're thinking a deal of money here, and I reckon you've not getting much." "No," said Margaret, "that's very true, but we are educated people, and have lived amongst educated people. Is there anything so wonderful in our being asked out to dinner by a man who owns himself inferior to my father by coming him to be instructed? I don't mean to blame Mr. Thornton. Few drapers' assistants, as he was once, could have made themselves what he is. But can you give dinners back in your small house? Mr. Thornton's house is 3 times as big." "Well, I think we could manage to give Mr. Thornton a dinner back, as you call it. Perhaps not in such a large room, nor with so many people. But I don't think we thought about it in that way." "I never thought you'd be dining with the Thorntons," repeated Bessy. Why, the mayor himself dines there, and the members of parliament and all. I think I could support the honour of meeting the mayor of Milton. But then ladies dress grand, said Bessy with an anxious look at Margaret's print gown, which her Milton eyes appraised at 7p a yard. Margaret's face dimpled into a merry laugh. Thank you, Bessy, for thinking so kindly about my looking nice among all the smart people. But I've plenty of grand gowns. A week ago, I should have said they were far too grand for anything I should ever want here. But as I am to dine at Mr. Thornton's, and perhaps meet the mayor, I shall put on my very best gown, you may be sure. What will you wear? Asked Bessy, somewhat relieved. White silk, said Margaret. A gown I had for a cousin's wedding a year ago. That'll do, said Bessy, falling back into her chair. I should be loth to have you looked down upon. Oh, I'll be fine enough if that will save me from being looked down upon in Milton. I wish I could see you dressed up, said Bessy. I reckon you're not what folk would call pretty. You've not red and white enough for that. But done you know, I'd dreamt of you long afore ever I seed you. Nonsense, Betty. But I did. Your very face. Looking with your clear, steadfast eyes out of the darkness, with your hair blown off from your brow, and going out like rays round your forehead, which was just as smooth and straight as it is now. And you always came to give me strength, which seemed to gather out your deep, comforting eyes. And you was dressed in shining raiment, just as you're going to be dressed. So you see, it was you. Nay, Bessy, said Margaret gently, it was but a dream. And why mightn't I dream a dream in my afflictions as well as others? Did not many one in the Bible? Aye, and I see visions too. Why, even my father thinks a deal of dreams. I tell you again, I saw you as plainly, coming swiftly towards me, with your hair blown back, with the very swiftness of the motion, just like the way it grows, a little standing off like, and the white shining dress on you getting away. Let me come and see you in it. I want to see you and touch you as in the very deed you were in my dreams. My dear Bessy, it is quite a fancy of yours. Fancy or no fancy, you've come as I knew you would when I saw your movement in my dream. And when you hear about me, I reckon I'll feel easier in my mind, and comforted, just as a fire comforts one on a dree day. You said it were on the 21st. Please God, I'll come and see you. Oh, Bessy, you may come and welcome, but don't talk so. It really makes me sorry. It does indeed. Then I'll keep it to myself if I bite my tongue out. Not but what it's true for all that. Margaret was silent. At last she said, Let us talk about it sometimes, if you think it's true. But not now. Tell me, has your father turned out? Aye, said Bessy heavily, in a manner very different from that she had spoken in but a minute or two before. He and many others, all Hampers men, and many a one besides. The women are as bad as the men in their savageness this time. Food is high, and they mun have food for their childer, I reckon. S'pose Thornton sent them their dinner out. The same money spent on potatoes and meal would keep many a crying baby quiet and hush up its mother's heart for a bit. Don't speak so, said Margaret. You'll make me feel wicked and guilty in going to this dinner. No, said Bessy. Some's pre-elected to sumptuous feasts, and purple and fine linen. Maybe you're one on 'em. Others toil and moil all their lives, and the very dogs are not pitiful in our days as they were in the days of Lazarus. But if you ask me to cool your tongue with the tip of my finger, I'll come across the great gulf to you, just for the thought of what you've been to me here. Bessy, you're very feverish. I can tell it in the touch of your hand as well as what you've been saying. It won't be division enough in that awful day that some of us have been beggars here and some of us have been rich. We shall not be judged by that poor accident, but by our faithful following of Christ. Margaret got up and found some water, and soaking her pocket handkerchief in it, she laid the cool wetness on Bessy's forehead, and began to chafe the stone-cold feet. Bessy shut her eyes and allowed herself to be soothed. At last she said, "You'd have been deaved out your 5 wits, as well as me, if you'd had one body coming in after another to ask for father, and staying to tell me each one their tale. Some spoke a deadly hatred, and made my blood run cold with the terrible things they said of the masters. But more, being women, kept plaining and plaining, with the tears running down their cheeks and never wiped away nor heeded, of the price of meat, and how their children could not sleep at nights for the hunger." "And do they think the strike will mend this?" asked Margaret. "They say so," replied Bessy. "They do say trade has been good for long, and the masters has made no end of money. How much father doesn't know, but in course the union does. And, as is natural, they wanted their share of the profits, now that food is getting dear. And the union says they'll not be doing their duty if they don't make the masters give 'em their share. But the masters has getting the upper hand somehow, and I'm afeard they'll keep it now and evermore. It's like the great battle of Armageddon the way they keep it on, grinning and fighting at each other, till even while they fight they're picked off into the pit." Just then Nicholas Higgins came in. He caught his daughter's last words. "Ah, and I'll fight on too, and I've got it in this time. It'll not take long for to make 'em give in, for they've getting plenty of orders, all under contract, and they'll soon find out they better give us our 5% than lose the profits they'll gain, let alone the fine for not fulfilling the contracts. My masters, I know who'll win." Margaret fancied from his manner that he must have been drinking. Not so much from what he said, as from the excitement in the way he spoke. And she was rather confirmed in this idea by the evident anxiety Bessy showed to hasten her departure. Bessy said to her, "The 21st. That's Thursday week. I may come and see you dressed for Thornton's, I reckon. What time is your dinner?" Before Margaret could answer, Higgins broke out. "Thornton's? Are you going to dine at Thornton's? Ask him to give you a bumper to the success of his orders. By the 21st, I reckon, he'll be potted in his brains how to get 'em done in time. Tell him there's 700'll come marching into Marlborough Mills the morning after he gives the 5%, and we'll help him through his contract in no time. He'll have 'em all there. My master hamper, he's one of the old-fashioned sort. Ne'er meets a man by an oath or a curse. I should think he were going to die if he spoke me civil. But after all this, his bark were than his bite. And you may tell him one of his turnouts said so, if you like. Aye, but you'll have a lot of prize mill owners at Thornton's. I should like to get speech of 'em. When they're a bit inclined to sit still after dinner, I could now run for the life of 'em. I'd tell 'em my mind. I'd speak up the hard way they're driving us on." "Goodbye, Bessy. I shall look to see you on the 21st if you're well enough." The medicines and treatment which Dr. Donaldson had ordered for Mrs. Hale did her so much good at first that not only she herself, but Margaret began to hope that he might have been mistaken, that she could recover permanently. And as for Mr. Hale, although he had never had an idea of the serious nature of their apprehensions, he triumphed over their fears with an evident relief, which proved how much his glimpse into the nature of them had affected him. Only Dixon croaked forever into Margaret's ear. However, Margaret defied the raven, and would hope. They needed this gleam of brightness indoors, for out of doors, even to their uninstructed eyes, there was a gloomy, brooding appearance of discontent. Mr. Hale had his own acquaintances among the working men, and was depressed with their earnestly told tales of suffering and long endurance. They would have scorned to speak of what they had to bear to anyone who might, from his position, have understood it without their words. But here was this man, from a distant county, who was perplexed by the workings of a system into the midst of which he was thrown, and each was eager to make him judge, and to bring witness of his own causes for irritation. Then Mr. Hale brought all his budget of grievances, and laid it before Mr. Thornton, for him, with his experience as a master, to arrange them and explain their origin, which he always did on sound economical principles, showing that, as trade was conducted, there must always be a waxing and waning of commercial prosperity, and that in the waning a certain number of masters, as well as of men, must go down into ruin, and be no more seen among the ranks of the happy and prosperous. He spoke as if this consequence was so entirely logical that neither employers nor employed had any right to complain if it became their fate. The employer to turn aside from the race he could no longer run with a bitter sense of incompetency and failure, wounded in the struggle, trampled down by his fellows in their haste to get rich, slighted where he was once honoured, humbly asking for, instead of bestowing, employment with a lordly hand. Of course, speaking so of the fate that, as a master, might be his own in the fluctuations of commerce, he was not likely to have more sympathy with that of the workmen, who were passed by in the swift, merciless improvement or alteration, who would fain lie down and quietly die out of the world that needed them not, but felt as they could never rest in their graves for the clinging cries of the beloved and helpless they would leave behind, who envied the power of the wild bird that can feed her young with her very heart's blood. Margaret's whole soul rose up against him while he reasoned in this way, as if commerce were everything and humanity nothing. She could hardly thank him for the individual kindness which brought him that very evening to offer her, for the delicacy which made him understand that he must offer her privately, every convenience for illness that his own wealth or his mother's foresight had caused them to accumulate in their household, and which, as he learnt from Dr. Donaldson, Mrs. Hale might possibly require. His presence, after the way he had spoken, his bringing before her the doom which she was vainly trying to persuade herself might yet be averted from her mother, all conspired to set Margaret's teeth on edge as she looked at him and listened to him. What business had he to be the only person, except Dr. Donaldson and Dixon, admitted to the awful secret, which she held shut in the most dark and sacred recesses of her heart, not daring to look at it unless she invoked heavenly strength to bear the sight? That, some day soon, she should cry aloud for her mother, and no answer would come out of the blank, dumb darkness. Yet he knew all. She saw it in his pitying eyes. She heard it in his grave and tremulous voice. How reconcile those eyes, that voice with the hard, reasoning, dry, merciless way in which he laid down axioms of trade, and serenely followed them out into their full consequences. The discord jarred upon her inexpressibly. The more because of the gathering woe of which she heard from Bessy. To be sure, Nicholas Higgins, the father, spoke differently. He had been appointed a committee man, and said that he knew secrets of which the exoteric knew nothing. He said this more expressly and particularly on the very day before Mrs. Thornton's dinner party. When Margaret, going in to speak to Bessy, found him arguing the point with Butcher, the neighbour of whom she had frequently heard mention, as by turns exciting Higgins's compassion, as an unskilful workman with a large family depending upon him for support, and at other times enraging his more energetic and sanguine neighbour by his want of what the latter called spirit. It was very evident that Higgins was in a passion when Margaret entered. Butcher stood, with both hands on the rather high mantelpiece, swaying himself a little on the support which his arms, thus placed, gave him, and looking wildly into the fire, with a kind of despair that irritated Higgins, even while it went to his heart. Bessy was rocking herself violently backwards and forwards, as was her wont, Margaret knew by this time, when she was agitated. Her sister, Mary, was trying on her bonnet, in great clumsy bows, as suited her great clumsy fingers, to go to her fustian cutting, blubbering out loud the while, and evidently longing to be away from a scene that distressed her. Margaret came in upon this scene. She stood for a moment at the door, Then, her finger on her lips, she stole to a seat on the squab near Bessy. Nicholas saw her come in, and greeted her with a gruff, but not unfriendly, nod. Mary hurried out of the house, catching gladly at the open door, and crying aloud when she got away from her father's presence. It was only John Butcher that took no notice whatever who came in and who went out. "It is no use, Higgins. You cannot live long in this, and who's just sinking away, not for one of meat herself, but because he cannot stand the sight of the little ones clemming. Clemming! 5 shillings a week may do well enough for thee with but 2 mouths to fill, and one of them a wench who can well earn her own meat. But it's clemming to us. And I'm telling thee plain, if who dies, as I'm feared who will afore I getting the 5%, I'll fling the money back in the master's face and say, be doomed to you, be doomed to the whole cruel world of you. That could near leave me the best wife that ever bore childer to a man. And look thee, lad, I'll have thee. That could never leave me the best wife that ever bore childer to a man. And look thee, lad, I'll late thee and the whole pack of the Union. Aye, and chase you through heaven with my hatred. I will, lad, I will, if you're leading me astray of this matter. Thou saidst, Nicholas, on Wednesday night, and now it's Tuesday in the 2nd week, that afore a fortnight we'd had the masters come a-begging to us to take back our work at our own wage. And time's nearly up. And there's our little Jack, lying abed, too weak to cry, but just every now and then sobbing up his heart for want of food. Our little Jack, I tell thee, lad, who's never looked up sin he was born, and who loves him as if he were her very life, as he is. I reckon he'll have cost me that precious price, our little Jack, who wakened me each morn with his putting his sweet lips to my great rough face, as seeking a smooth place to kiss. And he lies clemming." Here the deep sobs choked the poor man, and Nicholas looked up with eyes brimful of tears to Margaret before he could gain courage to speak. "Hold up, man. Thy little Jack shall now clem. I gotten brass, and we'll go buy the chap a sup of milk and a good 4-pounder this very minute. What's mine's thine, sure enough. I'll voust thee one. Only do not lose heart, man," continued he, as he fumbled in a teapot for what money he had. "I lay you my heart and soul will win for this. It's but bearing on 1 more week, and you'll just see the way the masters will come round, praying on us to come back to our mills, and the Union, that's to say I, will take care you've enough for the childer and the missus. So do not turn faint-heart and go to the tyrants a-seeking work." The man turned round at these words, turned round a face so white and gaunt and tear-furrowed and hopeless that its very calm forced Margaret to weep. "You know well that a worse a tyrant than e'er the masters were says, 'Clem to death, and see 'em a clem to death ere you go again the Union.' You know it well, Nicholas, for you're a one of 'em. You may be kind hearts, each separate, but once banded together, you've no more pity for a man than the wild, hunger-maddened wolf." Nicholas had his hand on the lock of the door. He stopped and turned round on Butcher, close following. "So help me God, man alive, if I think I'm not doing the best for thee, and for all on us, if I'm going wrong when I think I'm going right, it's their sin who have left me where I am, in my ignorance. I thought till my brains ached. Believe me, John, I've. And I say again, there's no hope for us but having faith in the Union. They'll win the day, see if they do not." Not one word had Margaret or Bessy spoken. They had hardly uttered the sighing that the eyes of each called to the other to bring up from the depths of her heart. At last Bessy said, I never thought to hear father call on God again, but you heard him say, 'So help me God.'" "Yes," said Margaret. "Let me bring what money I can spare. Let me bring you a little food for that poor man's children. Don't let them know it comes from anyone but your father. It will be but little." Bessy lay back without taking any notice of what Margaret said. She did not cry. She only quivered up her breath. "My heart's drained dry of tears," she said. "Butcher's been in these days past, telling me of his fears and his troubles. He's but a weak kind of chap, I know, but he's a man for all that. And though I've been angry many a times afore now with him and his wife, as I knew no more how to manage, yet you'll see, all folks isn't wise, yet God lets 'em live, aye, and gives them someone to love, and be loved by, just as good old Solomon. And if sorrow ever comes to them they love, it hurts 'em as sore as e'er it did Solomon. I can't make it out. Perhaps it's just as well as one as Butcher has the Union to see after him. But I'd just like to see the men as make the Union, and put 'em one by one faced with Butcher. I reckon if they heard him, they'd tell him, if I cotched 'em one by one, he might go back and get what he could for his work, even if it weren't so much as they offered." Margaret sat utterly still. How was she ever to go away into comfort and forget that man's voice, with the tone of unutterable agony, telling more by far than his words of what he had to suffer? She took out her purse. She had not much in it of what she could call her own, but what she had, she put into Bessy's hands without speaking. "Thank you. There's many of 'em that gets no more, and it's not so bad off. Leastways, does not show it as he does. But father won't let 'em want now he knows. You see, Butcher's been pulled down with his childer, and her being so cranky, and all they could pawn has gone this last 12 month. You'd not to think we'd a letting 'em clem, for all we're a bit pressed ourself. If neighbours doesn't see after neighbours, I don't know who will." Bessy seemed almost afraid lest Margaret should think that they had not the will, and, to a certain degree, the power of helping one whom she evidently regarded as having a claim upon them. "Father is sure and positive the masters must give in within these next few days, that they canna hold much longer. But I thank you all the same. I thank you for myself, as much as for Butcher, for it just makes me heart warm to you more and more." Bessy seemed much quieter today, but fearfully languid and exhausted. As she finished speaking, she looked so faint and weary that Margaret became alarmed. "It's not," said Bessy. "It's not death yet. I've had a fearful night with dreams, or somewhat like dreams, for I were wide awake, and I'm all in a swounding daze today. Only yon poor chap made me alive again. No, it's not death yet, but death is not far off. Aye, cover me up, and maybe I'll sleep, if the cough will let me. Good night. Good afternoon, may happen I should say, but the light is dim and misty today." Thank you so very much for listening. If you enjoyed, please like, comment, share, all that jazz, and if you really enjoyed, do subscribe, because there is more to come. If you're listening on podcast, please leave a review, as it's the easiest way to get this in front of as many people as possible, and reading your reviews really, really makes my day. If you want to support the show further, there is a Ko-Fi link here on screen, or you can find the same link in the description box. It's just a direct way to donate towards the show. You can also donate directly on YouTube if you're watching there. But honestly, the best thing that you could do for me right now would just be to put the show on Spotify and allow me to hopefully finally get the monetization deblocking requirements that I need there. It would be so life-changing for me if we could get that done. So if in any way at all that you could help, that would be fantastic. Once again, thank you so very much for listening, and until next time, bye-bye.